rule that I don't use those snap-on tuners like Snarks or Korg or anything like that, because they look weird. And anytime I see a guitar player with them, it looks bizarre. So my advice is get a floor tuner, because otherwise when you have those things like sticking off here, it just, I don't know why, but it just looks like it just looks hideous, and it looks very amateurish for some reason. But they are handy for some things, but I found that the Snark tuners are not very accurate for studio stuff. I'm not sure how you guys feel about that, but be curious to get your about what kind of tuners everybody uses. Anyways, couple announcements here. For those of you that are don't know about my master class coming up, it's on July 29th here in Atlanta. Love to see you guys in person. For those of you that live anywhere within a whatever, couple 100-mile radius, come on down for the day. It's going to be an 8-hour master class, and everybody's asked me, how does it differ from what you do on your live streams? Well, the biggest difference is that I can never play music on my live stream, nor can I play music other than about 8 seconds worth on my videos. If you've ever wondered why I don't actually play stuff on there, it's because of that, because YouTube will take the videos down. So part of the ability to teach music is dependent on being able to play it for people and explain what's going on. So I can't play a symphonic piece, for example, and talk about film scoring. I can't play, I can't even play Stairway to Heaven or anything. Certainly can't play anything that's on Warner Brothers. So there's going to be a lot of listening that we're going to do, and using things that are things that I can't use on YouTube. So that's going to be a huge, huge part of it. Plus, you guys can ask any questions you want in person, which is going to be really great. I'm looking forward to it, because I don't get a chance to meet any of you because I don't leave my house ever. I did, however, go to see the band Avenged Sevenfold the other day that was in town. I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with the band. They're a heavy rock band that's been out, oh boy, since 1999. And Sinister Gates, the guitarist, who's a incredibly great guy, we got to hang out. He came by the studio here, and he's going to be in a sounding off coming up soon. I also have a sounding off, which I'm really looking forward to. I also have a sounding off with Gary Husband, who is the drummer that played with Allan Holdsworth on IOU, on many of Allan's records, who also plays keyboards with Mahavishnu. So Gary, I've already done it. I think I'm going to put it out on Thursday this week. So for those of you that are familiar with Gary's playing, he's not only is he phenomenal drummer, and interesting point being that Dennis Chambers says he was actually one of his influences, but he's also an incredibly good keyboardist. So has been playing with John McLaughlin for a long time, and he does gigs, straight as a keyboardist too. So really fascinating interview with him, talking about his time playing with Allan. So I think you'll for those of you that are Holdsworth fans, I'm trying to run the gambit of all the former Holdsworth members. Since Allan's not with us anymore, I've had Jeff Berlin, I've had on Sounding Off, and then obviously Steve Hunt, and now Gary Husband. So I hope to have Chad Wackerman, and I hope to have Jimmy Johnson. I hope to have, honestly, anybody that played with Allan, I'd be happy to have on Sounding Off, because I'd love to get insights into the man, since we don't really have the opportunity anymore. Anyway, so that's my announcements regarding that. I've done a couple videos recently. I put out a video yesterday about film scoring, and I know some of you, if you don't see a guitar in my hand in the videos, think, okay, well maybe that's not going to be of any interest to me. There's a lot of things in these videos. For example, yesterday's video was as much about ear training as it is about film scoring. Essentially, I described how to listen to something and figure out exactly what it is, what the steps are, what I listen for when I'm listening to a voicing and I'm trying to figure it out. If I'm trying to transcribe, you know, if I'm working on an Alan Holdsworth tune and I hear a chord like this, right, and I'm thinking about, that's the first chord from Looking Glass, I think, or maybe it's this. Yeah, that's what it is. So here's the first chord. Now that's an incredibly hard chord to play. When I heard it, I had to figure it out, and I was like, okay, well, how is Alan playing this? And I figured, well, I've seen Alan play many times, and so I would go through deductive reasoning. I could hear the notes. I heard the D and A, and I heard that interval, and I thought, okay, well, he's either playing it there, so he could be playing it like this. Okay, then it'd be like that, the second chord. And I thought, well, that looks like that could be an Alan shape, actually, right? Those two voicings. It could be here, where you're playing the those notes, and it's actually easier to play there and to go back like this than it is where Alan actually plays it. But there's a consistency. Alan does a lot of stretches between these two fingers that are a whole step apart, or at least 2 frets apart. It makes it really difficult to play. But you always notice that Alan would hold his guitar really high and had obviously long fingers. So, and then he, you know, and then he would go up to that voicing after. So, once again, those could have been played like this. But part of your ability as a transcriber is to realize what strings things are played on as well. So in my video yesterday, I was doing a cue from a composer named, what was his name, Aaron?
Rocabanos.
Rocabanos.
Yeah.
And the movie was called In the Name of the Sea or something? Or is it really great soundtrack that Aaron actually told me about, and it has some incredibly good string writing. So
In the Heart of the Sea.
In the Heart of the Sea. And I was showing how to figure out some of the chords. So they had these beautiful string voicings, and when you hear them, they just sound super full. So the first thing I did in identifying it, which is what I would do with guitar, same thing if I'm figuring out something by ear. When you start to hear chords like this, for example, if you don't know this shape, then, and you hear the chord like that, you have to pull some note out of it. If you can hear da da da, that part of it, do, that's the root, do, so do 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 do. Now, one thing to practice with that, so one thing I did in the video yesterday is I talked about strategies for figuring things out. Singing whatever note is the prominent note that you hear, which is usually the melody note in the highest part of the chord, is usually the easiest thing to hear. And I would move from the melody note down to the bass note and try and figure out what that is, because usually that will present itself loudly because it's down low. In a voicing like this, it's not quite as obvious because there's only a tritone away there, and because there's a tritone low in the chord, it's very hard to hear because it doesn't separate itself like it would if you were playing a simple minor 7th here and you're bum, you hear that A really clearly. So I would try and identify that. Then I'd say, is the chord major or minor? So in this example that I did yesterday, the chord was obviously a minor chord. Top note was C, and then I figured out the bottom note was C, so I said, okay, this is some type of C minor chord. But by the fullness of it, I immediately said, well, there's a spread triad down low. And as soon as I played the spread triad, so I played the voicing C, G, E flat, C, okay? That's the same kind of voicing that Thomas Newman used in Shawshank Redemption in the first chord in this one section where it's like D flat, A flat, F, D flat. Same thing, except done with the C minor chord. And then the second chord in the song, in this cue, the melody note moves up to A, and the bass, I could tell, goes to E flat. Well, E flat with an A. That's a tritone, so that's a sharp 11. I could tell it was a major type chord. So it had a spread triad in the low part of it because it sounded super full. So I did the voicing E flat, B flat, G. It's E flat major spread triad with an A above the G like that. And as soon as I played it, oh, identical, that's the right chord. So I'm using some deductive reasoning. If things sound super full, these spread triads sound really full, whether they're on piano or strings or on the guitar. Now, just to review with you guys spread triads, because I talk about this term all the time, and I forget that a lot of people don't know what they are. A spread triad is, some people refer to it as a drop 2 chord, okay? If I take a chord like this, let's say a D major chord in close position. Close position would be root, 3rd, 5th. Take the middle note and I drop it down the octave. That is a spread triad there. Now, when you take a root position chord, now if I move the middle note up the octave, it becomes. So when I move the middle note up, it becomes, the root stays the same, okay? So you should know both inversions of them, okay? So remember, when you drop the note down, the middle note of a chord down, a root position chord, it becomes a first inversion chord. Because you're dropping the 3rd down the octave. You're dropping in an octave. If you raise the middle voice up the octave, it remains a root position chord. Now, what's cool about this is that these spread triads for voicings, you start getting into some really cool things like Holdsworth would do, or you know, Iden Essen, people like that, where you've got these spread triads with a bass note. So I like the sound of chords like this. That would be a Lydian augmented sound. So I have a spread triad here. So that's a B major spread triad over G. So, or using a spread triad here, that's a G major over E flat. So it's a Lydian, E flat Lydian augmented. But you can also do some cool things like this, where it becomes an altered chord, a dominant 7, flat 9, flat 5 chord. Can they see my hand here, Aaron?
Yeah.
Do I need to get a little closer so people can see? Does that help at all?
Yeah.
So this would be an F sharp altered chord. So I've got the spread triad here. So I've got a C major spread triad over F sharp, which gives me the flat 9 and the flat 5. And it's a great sound, but they're hard to play. Really hard to play, because you have to finger pick them. You could strum them, because since I'm muting all the notes in between. I love that sound though. I love. So what you want to do then is you want to figure out things like 2-5-1s, for example, that will use spread triads. This is a good way to practice them. If I took an A major spread triad here and I put F sharp in the bass, it becomes an F sharp minor 7 chord, but kind of a different version of it. What's nice about it is that spread triad sounds really cool like that. So that's my F sharp minor 7 chord. And then when I go to the B7 chord, I'm going to go like this. I'm going to drop these down, and I'm going to go to that voicing. So I went to F major over B. So then I go to the 1 chord. Okay, that would be a really modern 2-5-1. Now, you could say, well, the voice leading on that 2nd chord is a little strange to go. Oh, that sounds great. You also have, so you could take this voicing and do an inversion of it, okay? So if I take this F major chord and I go to the next inversion, that's the next inversion there, okay? So it's like, so those are the 3 inversions that are right near each other of F major. So if I take this F major and I put B in the bass, that will give me a B altered chord also. Same chord, but just with a different inversion. That sounds like a Holdsworth type chord, okay? So if I go 2, to 5, then to 1. So here's my 5 chord again. So I've got this F major like this. I'll do it again. So it's easier to hear it this way. Play the root, play the chord, 5 chord, and then the 1 chord. Now, spread triads don't have to be just major chords or minor chords. Obviously, a minor spread triad could be this, right? I could put F on that, and I'm playing A minor spread triad, right? And I put F in the bass. Now, if I put F in the bass, it becomes an F major 7, but it's an F major 7 that is not necessarily that commonly played with that particular voicing. Most people will play that, they'll play this, they'll play this, but they won't play this, where they'll just pick out those particular notes of the chord, okay? So, you can also do suspended chords and Lydian triads. So if I did this, that's A sus4 over F, or I can do A sus4 over F sharp, and you get a beautiful Aeolian voicing. That's like a minor 7 flat 6. That's a great chord. And I did it over C sharp there. That could be a C sharp altered chord, okay? Because I got sharp 5, flat 9, sharp 9, without the third. That's a super modern chord. So I can go 2 to 5 to 1. That's really, really hip. Okay, so once again, 2. So my 2 chord here is B major over G sharp. Okay, that's a minor 7 chord. Or I can make it minor 7 flat 6, right? 2. To C sharp 7 altered, to F sharp 7 sharp major 7 sharp 5. Let me do it in a different key so it's easier to see. I'll do it in like E in D major. So I've got E minor 7 flat 6. So I've got an G sus4 chord. Here's G major, G sus4, right, over E. So this is a sub. This would be an Aeolian sound that you can use in place of the 2 chord. So I'm making my 2 chord a minor 7 with a flat 6, or you could call it minor 7 sharp 5. 2, the 5 chord, I'm going to use an F sus4 over A, okay, which gives me an A altered chord, because I get the sharp 5, sharp 9, flat 9, and root. No third though, but it's very modern, very stark sound. And then the 1 chord, I could go to F sharp sus4 over D, and it gives me a D major 13. So listen what it sounds like. 2, let me do it. 2, 5, 1. Or I could go to this chord here. I go to 1 chord like that. It's kind of boring. I could go to that too as well. But that 2 chord as a minor 7 flat 6. My guitar here. Okay, so you've got your sus4 chords. Now you can also have Lydian triads in spread triad form. A little bit trickier to play, but not that tricky. So here's this would be a spread triad Lydian chord, a G Lydian. So you get, okay. Now if I put an E in the root, it gives me a Dorian sound. E Dorian. Let me get my pick here. So I've got, so that's a Lydian triad. A G Lydian over E, G Lydian over B. Okay, that gives me an Aeolian sound, just beautiful B Aeolian sound there. So that would be like a great minor let's say I did a minor. Ooh, that is sweet. Aaron, see, I got the nod from Aaron on that. He's like, whoa, that's nice. So I did a little 2-5-1, and just landing on that Aeolian voicing for the 1 makes you go, whoa. And for this voicing in particular should sound familiar. If you know Pat Metheny's first record, Bright Side's Life, it starts in A. It goes, he plays that. There's your Aeolian sound. He's got, but he's going. That's totally Aeolian sound with an F in it. But this is actually kind of a cooler sound here because it's more stark. And I did it once again. I'll do the 2-5-1. 2, 5, 1. It's very unexpected to hear that flat 6 there because your ear. I could have gone which is really nice voice leading. So what I changed there, I could go. That's with half step movement. So here's my minor 11 chord, C sharp minor 11. So I have a E sus 4 over C sharp. Then I have a C major over F sharp, okay, and then I go to that 1 chord, which is an Aeolian sound. You always want to be thinking about this voice leading when you're doing stuff like that. These can also be played as arpeggios in lines. So if I'm playing, I can break my line. So if I'm playing on B minor 11 chord, I'm using an Aeolian sound and really being able to right? Great sound. Don't be afraid to play those intervals like that because I think it frees your playing up so that you're not just shredding around and playing a bunch of arpeggios and stuff. Isolate those particular notes. You know? Like if I've got that as a 1 chord, I've got my 2, 5 chord. I'm playing out of that chord shape. I'm playing out of that chord shape. So that should give you some ideas. Lydian triad, spread triad, sus4 spread triad, major spread triad, minor spread triad, diminished spread triad. We haven't talked about that, or augmented spread triad. Now, those will give you different kind of sounds. So if you take G major, very simply, to make it augmented, you go like this. There's your augmented spread triad. Now, some of you might know some of these sounds where you're hearing voicing like that. That's a beautiful minor major 7 sound. I took an G augmented triad and put it over E, and it gives me a very lush sounding E minor major 7 chord. Okay. So once again, if you're doing a 2-5-1, if I go, and then I go my 1 chord, beautiful sound. 2, 5, or I could go to this spread triad, and then go to this augmented. See that? Or this spread triad to this spread triad. Now, augmented. Now we have the same thing for diminished. Take your minor and you make it a diminished. Now that's actually something, that shape that you know, because it's right the diminished chord. So you guys have seen those shapes before. That's not quite as uncommon. Because if you're playing, you know, A7, you're playing minor 2-5-1, you know, you're used to that shape. Yeah. Okay, questions?
Hey Rick, maybe you can give us a walkthrough and some thoughts on how to learn any song from a real book.
Okay, the first thing I would do, I actually have a whole system of what I would do when I was a college professor. The first thing you do is you try to memorize the chord progression as fast as you can. I used to do this thing where any student of mine would give me the real book. Now the real book I had back 35 years ago was different. They had all different songs in it. But you take the real book and you try and memorize. I'd say I can memorize any song in 10 seconds or 5 seconds. I forget what it was. And I'd look at it and I'd quickly examine it and find the patterns. And the patterns would be where the 2 5s are and what keys they're in and what the relationships are. So that's the first thing to do is like, okay, you know, if you're taking a tune like, let me think about this. Trying to think of an easy tune. What's something that's got a
Somebody says Blue Bossa.
Blue Bossa? Okay, so if you took Blue Bossa, for example, you say, okay, it starts on C minor, so it starts on 1, and then it goes to F minor 7. So it goes to the 4 minor, and then it does the 2-5-1 in C minor. So it's like 2 bars of this, 2 bars of F minor 7, 1 bar, 1 bar, 2 bars, then a 2-5-1 in D flat. Well, sometimes people go, I don't like doing that. I think just. So, very simple. 2 bars in C minor 7, 2 bars F minor 7, 1 bar D, then a 1 bar apiece, 2-5-1 in C minor. Modulate up with a 1 chord being held for 2 bars. Modulate up, do a 2-5-1 in D flat major with 1 chord being held for 2 bars. Then another 1 bar apiece, minor 2-5-1 in C minor, and then the turnaround in the last bar where you're doing a half diminished. You're doing a minor 2-5 turnaround. So finding those patterns super fast. Blue Bossa is essentially kind of, it has a vibe of a. Now it's kind of like a minor blues a little bit, but it's a. I would think of, okay, you've got the 1 chord and the 4 chord, both 2 bars apiece, and then the cadences you can hear when they're minor 2-5-1, so that's really obvious, and you can visualize them really easy. So there's only one modulation to know in the tune, and it's moving up, knowing where to go. So if you hear, you're going up a minor 3rd from C minor 7 up to E flat minor 7, or you're doing a 2-5-1 in the key a half step above. So that's, you know, it's the same thing if you take all the things you are. I look at it, I'm like, okay, 6-2-5-1-4 in A flat, 2-5-1 in C, 6-2-5-1-4 in E flat, 2-5-1 in G, 2-5-1 in G, 2-5-1 in E, A flat augmented or C altered, then 6-2-5-1-4 in A flat, then you go to a quick 2-5 in B major, then a C minor 7 for 1 bar, B diminished for 1 bar, 2-5-1 in A flat major, 2-5-1 in F minor. So that's the way I think of it. That I'm thinking of the chord progressions, almost like you would in Nashville numbering system or something. I'm looking at the patterns and their relationships to what keys they are. So in all things you are, like I said, so you start on A flat major for 5 bars, C major for 4 bars, E flat major for 5 bars, G major for 2 bars, and then you're on the bridge, and then you're in G major for 4 bars, E major for essentially E major, but a lot of people will play on the second half. So it's kind of E minor to E major there, and then you're back to A flat major. 6, 2, 5, 1, 4, and then 2, 5, and B, C minor. Okay, that's a 3 chord to B diminished, then 2, 5, 1, then quick minor 2, 5, and F minor. So that pattern works that way. It's knowing what the Roman numerals are. That's the way you learn tunes, and you have to memorize them before you can improvise on them. The other thing that I do is that I would make the students say the chord progression as fast as they could, because you can only improvise as fast as you can say it. So if you're doing All Things You Are, I always do this one, you know, or any of the tunes, whether you're doing Giant Steps or whatever, you got to be able to say the chord progression fast. So what I mean by that is like all the things you are. F minor 7, B flat minor 7, E flat 7, A flat major 7, D flat major 7, D minor 7, G 7, C minor C major 7, C minor 7, F minor 7, B flat major or B flat 7, E flat major 7, A flat major 7, A minor 7, D 7, G major 7, A minor 7, D 7, G major 7, F sharp minor 7, 5, B 7 altered, E major 7, C altered, F minor 7, B flat minor 7, E flat 7, A flat major 7, D flat major 7, D flat minor 7, G flat 7, C minor 7, B diminished 7, B flat minor 7, E flat 7, A flat major 7, G minor 7 flat 5, C 7 to F minor 7. Now, the fact that I'm thinking that, I'm seeing the lead sheet in front of my eyes. In order to improvise over it, you have to be able to see the lead sheet. Because if you can't visualize it, you can't improvise over it. You can't hear it. You have to know where you're going, and the only way to know where you're going is to see the sound and hear the sound at the same time. And you have to be slightly ahead of it. It's just like reading. If you're sight reading, if you're reading the note that you're on when you're sight reading, there's no chance you have of playing the next rhythm correct or the next note correctly. You have to be a few notes ahead. You have to be a couple bars, because if I'm playing a line, that if I'm, going to play a line in All Things You Are, I'm on D flat major 7, and I've got a, and then I'm going to go there for D minor 7, because I have to think, where is that line leading? So I had to think of that quick 2-5. So that's the thing. In order to lead the listener with a line, you have to hear ahead. You got to know these things. They got to be completely internalized and memorized. Yes. That's a Rick short answer. I do these unbelievably elaborate answers. Sorry about that. Aaron?
Yeah, I got two questions here that I'm gonna kind of put together because they're related. Somebody asked, how do you approach taking complex topics and breaking them down so young or less experienced students can grasp them? And somebody else asks, my son is 22 months old. What should I be doing for him at this age?
He's 22 months old?
Yeah.
Well, 22 months old is still in the window for for kids to retain their perfect pitch. I would get them on a high information music listening diet, which means modern jazz and modern classical music. I would say you could sign up for our app Neural. I don't want to be on here pushing that necessarily, because I don't like to do that. But that would be something you can do. But I would definitely be playing them a diet of very complex music, at least an hour to 3 hours a day, and interacting with them. As far as Neural uses really specific high information music it's the exact music I used with my kids. So those of you have seen the results. So they, I'm not saying everybody's going to have the same results. The younger you are, the better chance you have of developing this. But this early window of development for kids is incredibly important. Now, regarding complex topics and complex concepts, you have to have I always tell people, if you're really, really, really diligent, you can learn all the theory in music in 2 years, maybe 3 years at the most. And when I say all the theory in music, I mean all of music theory. That means, you know, counterpoint, SATB writing, the different species of counterpoint. Counterpoint's just note against note movement, understanding harmonic progressions, understanding the names of every chord tone, you know, tonic, supertonic, mediant, subdominant, dominant, submediant, leading tone, understanding the function of 5 chords in minor keys, understanding how minor keys work, understanding all of the modes in relation to their notes. These are all things you need to have, right at the top of your, right at the top of your mind. You need to be able to do this stuff. You need to be able to compute it and hear it at the same time. So it's not enough to know, oh, on a 3 chord you play Phrygian. If I'm in the key of C major, I'm playing E Phrygian. If I'm in the key of, G major and I'm on the 5 chord, I'm playing D Mixolydian. Well, if I'm in the key of C altered dominant, C superlocrian, I'm really playing in D flat melodic minor. And knowing these things right off the top of your head is extremely important. So these are all the things that you would need to know. You need to know what chords are in what keys, what scales go with them, how to write parts, how to figure out how to do Roman numeral analysis of whatever you're hearing. You have to know things like chromatic mediant modulations, augmented 6 chords, meaning Italian, French, and German, along with Neapolitan 6 chords. You need to know how to recognize them all by ear, know the theory of them. I'm talking about all this. Be able to analyze any jazz tune, be able to analyze a Chopin prelude, a Bach fugue, a Beethoven symphony. You need to know about pitch sets if you're looking at 20th century music, what an X cell is, what a Y cell is. You have to know, Messiaen's modes of limited transposition. This is what I say about 3 years. If you studied every day for 3 hours a day and have a great memory, you can learn all the theory in music in that long, and then you can put it to use. So that's how you approach complex topics, by immersing yourself in it and retaining all this knowledge. This is interesting. When I went to school for grad school, or in undergrad, I wasn't a jazz major, but I was a classical bass major. But anybody that played, but I was a double major. I was classical bass and jazz guitar. Anybody that had a jazz degree, though, exempted out of Music Theory 1. So I never took Music Theory 1 because music theory for jazz musicians was much easier. And you knew everything that was in there. And I never took theory before I went to college, but I knew everything in Theory 1 already. Same thing is that when I went to grad school, as a jazz major, you got to take a test and you could exempt out of all your theory. So I exempted out of all my theory that I needed. And it was classical music theory. But jazz players most of the jazz players I went to college with at NEC had tremendous knowledge of classical music as well. I don't know if it's as much the case anymore, but in my Beato book, all this theory of how all the modes relate to chords, that chord tone to chord scale relationship is extremely important. What all the rules are for different resolutions, understanding terms like spread triads, understanding, and all different types of modulations, chord substitutions, because they don't necessarily teach you chord substitutions if you're taking classical music theory. You learn about modulations. Well, modulations and chord substitutions are 2 different things. You have to understand modulations as well. You got to know when you're changing keys. Like when you see a dominant chord, that's usually the indication. It's either a secondary dominant or it's the beginning of a new key change. Okay, so to understand these complex theories, you have to start at the beginning and you have to understand all the underlying theory up to that point. And there is no shortcut for this. Otherwise, you just start getting these holes in your knowledge. My thing about my channel is trying to plug the holes. I tell people, go back and watch my old videos. And I can tell that people don't necessarily go back and watch the old videos. I can tell from when I look in the comments. And I see somebody, can you make a video on this? Well, I've made 5 videos on that already. All you have to do is look up in the playlists and you can find them. There's absolutely no, no reason that you should wonder what a Mixolydian Sharp 11 scale is, because I have a video that's 10 minutes long on it where I explain it, I write a piece in it, and talk about its usage. So anyways, my channel is a resource for all these kind of ideas. Even, a lot of the classical music, other than Counterpoint, which I haven't really gotten to yet, which I'm going to get to. Use the channel. Go back through these old videos. Just because they've been out doesn't mean, there's 300 of them. There's a wealth of knowledge. You should try and go through a video every day. I know I'm putting new ones out all the time. Just don't just watch the new ones, because there's tremendous information in these old videos. Yes, Aaron.
We got a question on the Beata book, actually.
Okay.
How does the Beata book differ from all the other books saturating the market? I've spent more money on books than toilet paper over the years, and I get leery about
I doubt that.
Buying more of the same.
Well, the Beata book is different because it doesn't have any of the same stuff in it. I use my own terms. You don't really hear Lydian triads, Phrygian triads, 12-tone arpeggios. My book is incredibly thorough. It'll take you years and years and years to get through the 300 pages. That's how my book differs. I'm a completist. I have to have I have to exhaust. In my book, I harmonized the note C with probably 500 chords, for example. And I go through all the bitonal arpeggios, all the polytonal arpeggios, all the polychords, everything like that. Books just don't get into all this stuff. Single books don't. Modal scales, modal chord progressions, sharp and flat direction modulations. They just don't, people don't cover this stuff. It's amazing, actually, but it's great because my book is like no other book. So that's how it differs. You can't find the information other places. People look on my thing and I play a triad like this. I say, oh, that's a Lydian spread triad. I'm like, what? What's a Lydian triad? Well, it's 1 sharp 4 5. It's like a sus4, but it's a sus sharp 4. Here's my sus4 triad. A triad's a 3-note chord. Anything contained within a fifth, you have multiple triads. You have sus2 chords. That's a triad. That's a major chord, D major, D sus2, D sus4, D Lydian. Okay, so these are all things, D minor, D Phrygian. And you just don't see those terms in other books. That's how it differs. How's that? So you can save your money on toilet paper and buy the Beata book. Just joking. But I would suggest when you buy it, print the thing out at Kinko's and have it bound so you can write in it. That's what it's all about.
Okay, we got a question from James Anderson asking about abstract scale ideas over C major 7. I'm sick of playing boring C major tones. What outside scale will work over C major 7?
Okay, so you have C major, like you said. You see Lydian. You see Lydian augmented, which is a great scale choice. And then you have things where you can play different arpeggios. C, D, C, D, C, D, C, D. I just went between 2 different triads there, a C major and D major triad. You can play things like, I just played an E major spread triad there over C. Right? So I got 2, 5. Now that's a very modern sound there, right? I did. just did a weird 2-5-1. So I got D minor 7. So D minor 7, I forgot what I did. I did like D Aeolian, then G altered, and I did E major over C. So don't think in scales, think in shapes, think in chords. Don't get stuck by just playing boring stuff like that, you know, or just even straight arpeggio. Really kind of develop those lines. Right? So I'm doing a sequence. That's a great thing over C major 7. And I went up to C add 9. And I went to C Lydian. I went up to C major to a C Lydian triad. Right there I'm thinking a different shape. I'm playing. Triad. Okay, so don't get stuck in scales. Think in shapes, in colors and things like that. Using arpeggios, using scale fragments. Okay, I use this thing. I did a C add 9 arpeggio with a major third. To the sharp 4, and I did a Lydian arpeggio down. And I'm using a sharp 4, and I can use, and I used E major over that for a Lydian augmented sense. So you got to know all the different scales you can use: the major pentatonic, the major scale, the Lydian scale, Lydian augmented scale, and all these different associated, triads and things. You know, minor chords, minor triads, major triads, things like that. That will go over it. D major triad will go over it. E major triad will go over it. E minor 7 triad will go over it, or E minor 7 arpeggio. So that's like a hybrid arpeggio. I did E minor 7, put a C on the bass. Okay, so I'm not thinking I'm not thinking scalar. I'm thinking sounds. Aaron. I'm going to actually talk about that for a second.
Yeah.
So I like to talk about or think in like these bitonal arpeggios, for example. If I were to take a B7, or let's say I take a C7 chord here, and I take a C7 arpeggio, root, 3rd, 5th, flat 7. But then I do, if I do, that's using like a C7 to a C sharp diminished 7th arpeggio. Or I can use a C7 for a C13 flat 9 sound. I combine this A flat major arpeggio. I did root, 3rd, 5th, flat 7. Then I go up to the 3rd of this chord, and I'm thinking in that shape over it. So I thought here to that sound. called a bitonal arpeggio. I have all those bitonal arpeggios in the Beato book, by the way. So you can practice all those. But those are a great way to think of sounds, and add these, kind of combining two different arpeggios is a really, really great thing to practice. Aaron?
Yeah. How do you get fully focused for your practice sessions on a shitty day? Any meditation practice?
Usually just a lot of coffee, and I will, maybe do some yard work or something. Go to the park, or fight with my kids, play fight. That's, I'm not one that lacks in motivation to do stuff, except when the weather's really crappy out. That's really tough. It's tough to get motivated. Where do you live, by the way? If you live in Rochester, New York, it really depends. When you live in a cold climate, or a climate that rains all the time, you stay in a lot and everything, it's actually easier to practice than it is when it's really nice out. So as far as routines, I definitely have a routine that I go through. I did a vlog on it with, where I'm going to Starbucks and doing, I have my whole series of things that I need to do every day before I come on here and start working on stuff. Some of it involves reading about music, some of it involves, a lot of it involves listening to music to kind of get into mood to do it, but I'm always trying to learn everything, learn as much as I can every day. That's the real key. So make a list of what you need to work on, and just start chipping away at it. Aaron?
Could we talk in detail about the Aiden Essen improv from the High Information Lines video?
High Information Lines, is that the was that the one where I did Brad Mehldau and Kenny Barron, or was this the video I just put out of Aiden the other day?
I don't know, either one, I guess.
Because one of them was Aiden improvising over an F pedal.
Mehldau, he said.
Oh, the Mehldau one. Yeah, that's Aiden improvising over an F pedal tone. It's interesting, somebody put in the comments there that Aiden never plays F on the lines that he's playing. And he's doing this thing called modal mixture on that. Modal mixture it's in my Beato book. Once again, I'll put another shameless plug in there, but modal mixture is when you have target notes and you change scales every couple beats, or that's one technique of doing it. So you can get F major, let's say you're doing F pentatonic first, then you do F major, then you do F Lydian, then you do F Lydian augmented, and then you might do E major over F. And what Aiden's doing is he's changing scales every 2 beats, and he's got target notes that he's hitting. And in that whole lick, he never plays F, except in his left hand he's pedaling on F, but he avoids the F in the entire line. And somebody actually pointed that out in a comment, and I thought, wow, that is actually amazing, because this when Aiden was here a couple of years ago, he was teaching Dylan, giving Dylan a lesson, and he said, okay, take a B flat major scale, Dylan, and pick 3 notes for a B flat major voicing. So Dylan took the notes B flat C D, and he played them in his left hand. And Aiden said, okay, now play the remaining notes of the scale. That's what you're going to improvise with. And so then Dylan figured out a scale that had the remaining notes of B flat major, and so he used those to improvise. So then Aiden sat down and did a demonstration where Aiden kept changing the notes in his left hand, and as he was changing the notes, as fast as he changed the chord voicing in his left hand, 3 or 4 notes, he would change the scale and never play the same notes in his right hand in his single note lines as he was playing in his left hand. It was really unbelievable that anyone could even hear something like that or think that fast. But it was just so easy for him to do. And he could just do it and it didn't matter what chord progression he was playing either. Everything he played, he never doubled a note that he was playing in his left hand. No matter what the weird voicings were. He just instantly knew a new fingering to play. and avoided those notes so that there was no clashes, not clashes, there was no doubling of the notes. So that's one of the things about his, about that particular improvisation. It's also super melodic. I mean, it's just, it's tonal because it's changing, it's actually going over progressions, and he's changing scales. And he uses these target notes. When he's thinking in F, he starts out like F major pentatonic. Then he goes to F Ionian. But his Ionian has that has the sus4 note. Oh, I'm sorry. And then he goes to Lydian, and his Lydian. Then he goes to Lydian augmented. But he's winding around these things with all this incredible voice leading, so it all sounds like it makes sense, because it does, and it's super melodic. So you have to kind of build lines that have their own natural resolution tendencies. Very hard to do, but when you can do it, it just makes things super melodic.
Okay, could you tell your viewers to answer the straw poll that I just put out?
Yes, answer the straw poll that Aaron just put out, which I'm not sure what it is. What is the straw poll, Aaron?
It's on what videos to see more of on your channel.
What videos you would like to see more of on my channel? What kinds of videos would you like to see more of? There's no question that I have competing interests on here, because I do a lot of things. That's why I call it Everything Music, because I have a lot of different interests. And I try to cater to each constituency. It's fascinating to me, though, which videos people watch and which videos they don't watch. And the videos that they do watch, I'm thinking like, okay, why are they watching these videos? But there's these other videos that, some of my best videos are some of my least viewed videos, because nobody goes back and watches the videos I put out last year. And some of my favorite videos are videos that have the least views. So anyways, I would love to know, answer Aaron's poll here on what kind of videos you want to see on here. And I'm curious too, it's helpful if they, I always vary the length of my videos. My live streams tend to be 45 minutes to an hour, because it's like a lecture. My videos can really be any length. I used to make super long videos all the time. And I wouldn't say that there's any, that I notice any trend in anything that I do. I don't know why certain videos take off more than others. I have no idea. Maybe you guys know the answer to that. I'd love to know the answer to that, why they do. You can type it in now for Aaron.
Okay, so I got, so Beardy Man is asking.
Beardy Man, what's up?
Hey dude, do you have an academic paper in the works to back up Neural? I'm keen to use it, but I need to see a couple of published papers before I blast my unborn with high information music.
Well, you're not going to see any studies that long, because they take years to do. So if you don't blast your newborn infant with it, then there's no second chance. That's the there's no downside to playing high information music for your baby, except they may develop perfect pitch and be incredibly smart. That's the downside. There's not going to do anything. There's nothing bad to do about playing high information music. It's not going to do anything bad to them. So. But it takes years to do academic papers, and we're actively working with some neurologists and some working on doing some imaging of babies while they're listening to high information music. But it literally takes years to do that. So that's the downside of it. I mean, I'm perfectly honest with people. I didn't know it worked, and we didn't do it with my middle daughter, Lennon. until she was almost 2, when I figured out that Dylan had perfect pitch, because it just never even occurred to me that Dylan's ear was as good as it was. Honestly, because he didn't sing that in tune. But then I realized that kids don't have control of their vocal cords very well, which is one of the reasons, until they're almost 5 years old or so. You really find kids that are really good singers that are babies. I mean, you almost never. So, so Beardy Man, that's my answer on there. Unfortunately, I don't have the scientific papers there because, like I said, they're years in the works. So, I mean, the program. I mean, you have to do it for 2 years to begin with. We've only had the app out for 1 year, so.
Somebody's asking if there's going to be a Guthrie Govan sounding off.
Guthrie wrote to me when he was on tour. He's been on tour with Hans Zimmer. They've been over in Europe. I wrote to him a couple days ago. I'm waiting to hear back. I'm sure he'll get back to me. He said he definitely wanted to do it, so so I'm hoping that he will. And I've got some great questions to ask him when he's on. I love Guthrie. He's amazing. Any other ones here, Aaron?
Trying to see.
Do you guys like this when you can ask me questions? Because I feel like it's I never get a chance to interact with anyone, and since Aaron's moderating, it makes it incredibly easy, since I can never see the comments on my phone because I always film it with a phone. So
it's going crazy right now.
What do you mean? They like it when they can ask questions?
Everybody's like, yes.
You know, please go on to Reddit and talk about things. I mean, you know, the one thing about my channel is that not enough people know about it. Sinister Gates from Avenged Sevenfold, just before we came on, put a picture up on his Instagram with us hanging out on their bus from the other day and talked about my channel, literally right before the thing. And you know, it's and he told people they should check out my YouTube channel. Well, I'd like it if my subscribers told people, I know Beardy Man has, to check out, and I appreciate that a lot, to check out my channel. It's you know, a lot of this thing in YouTube is about sharing, and I know that I've got really, you know, I look at the analytics on this. I mean, I'm not too proud to say, or to you know, that if that's, you know, you just look at, because you're curious like how old the people are, and it's pretty even between 18 and 50 years old. But the people that are younger know how to share things. People that are older, that are my age, they don't know how to share things. It's simply you hit the share button and you can share it with your friends. But typically people as they get older don't have as many friends, and their friends don't have friends. That's more of a college thing. So those of you that are college kids that watch this and appreciate it, share it with your friends. Share my channel with your friends and my videos. And don't just, you know, if I'm not if I don't have a guitar in my hand and you're a guitar player, and you know, don't think that, oh well, I'm not going to click on Rick's video, or you know, some of the titles that I come up with are kind of stupid titles, and I've gone and changed them because Aaron told me, why are you titling your things like that? So on my sounding offs, I put, you know, I'm new at this. I've only been doing this for a year. I was like, man, why is John Petrucci's video not get more views? And because John Petrucci's name was the last thing in the title. And then it was like, oh, Aaron says, oh, you got to put the most important things are the first 2 words. So I put John Petrucci, and boom, right on the front page of YouTube, John Petrucci comes up. That video then. So just like by doing that and me learning and not using obtuse terms, it helps people find the videos easier. But like I said, just because I'm not playing the guitar and you're, you know, and you're a guitar player doesn't mean you shouldn't click on it if it says film scoring, because there's a lot of stuff to be gleaned, and there's a lot of cross pollination from video to video of conceptually. So a lot of these things that I do on keyboards are absolutely applicable to the guitar. So and vice versa. If you're a keyboardist or an improviser in another instrument, same thing too. Just because I'm playing guitar doesn't mean you can't apply these to everything, because you can.
And we have a question about modal progressions.
Yep.
up and down circle fits and why they feel the way they feel, like C major to F sharp Locrian to G Lydian, the C sharp Phrygian, etc. How do you approach? I get that's all the question was, but I guess he's asking how do you approach those modulations and how do you come up with where they go next?
Well, you have there. I mean, there's many different. It really depends. I can make a generalization and say that when you're on an upward modulation, it seems to lift a tune. An upward modulation would be going from F major to G major, for example, or even E flat major to C major. That would be an upward modulation, or E flat major to F major. I was doing this when I did the Keith Jarrett video the other day. You know, it's done okay. People should watch that Keith Jarrett video. The thing that I play in there, the Keith Jarrett piece that I played, that luckily YouTube didn't take off, is amazing, and you should listen to it. Just like the Iden Essen piece that I put in there, you should listen to. I played that, Beardy Man, I played that for my son Dylan every day. That was part of Neural. That is part of Neural. Literally, every day. All my kids know every note of that piece. And it's like 13 minutes long or so, and it's unbelievable. That's why Dylan can hear every single chord. Every chord that I've ever played Dylan is in that piece, because there's like a million chords in there. But these modal modulations, when you're losing flats and you're moving in a flat direction, you can be losing flats or you can be losing sharps. You can be going from D major to C major, D major to B flat major, and you're going counterclockwise around the circle of fifths, and it gives it a different feel. Those are downward modulations. And any of the modes that are associated with those keys are going to give the same feeling, okay? Because of, but the way that you voice the chords is really important as well. So it's hard to generalize. I can make a downward modulation feel like has a lift to it because of the way I voice the chords. So intervals are extremely important in it too. So I can't necessarily make a generalization. And then you have, I'm only talking, when you're talking right there, you're only talking about modes of the major scale. Obviously you have modes of the melodic minor, harmonic minor, you have auxiliary scales, and they all have their own sonic signature to them. They all have their own resolution tendencies between groups, but it's all about the lines that you write. Everything is about lines. Chords are just lines that intersect each other. If you look at a Bach fugue, everything is a line, but then when you look at it vertically and analyze it, it's a set of chords that go by. Some have suspensions, some have passing tones, but the line is key to everything. I mean, you do have things that are straight chords. I did in my video, a film scoring video yesterday, I demonstrated the chord from The Rite of Spring, the first polychord when the piece opens. It's an F flat, it's a E flat 7 chord in first inversion with a G over an F flat major chord. I'm not sure why Stravinsky wrote an F flat major, but it's really E major. And it has a really certain sound to it, and those are sounds you should be familiar with, and those are meant to be played to create rhythmic excitement. People who use polychords. So, anyways, those modulations, I can't generalize about them, but you have to experiment a lot.
Cool. Is the Beato book suitable for vibes players as well?
Absolutely, suitable for everything. It has a quarter of the 300 pages is devoted to the guitar. The rest is all theory and improvisation, written in notes. And, you know, as many non-guitar players buy the Beato book, I probably sold more to people that don't play guitar. I sell them to people who play all instruments, honestly, because it's mostly a theory and improv book. So.
Anything on Coltrane and his approach?
Well, his approach kind of changed over the years. He had really distinct sound periods. His early playing was very bebop oriented, especially the playing in Miles' quintet in the 50s. And then his playing changed a bit because the chord progression started to get a little more complex on the Blue Train record, which is 1959. Then 1960, 1 year later, he came out with Giant Steps, and he had Giant Steps and Countdown and Naima, things like that on that record. And then you went into his more experimental works that came even later, where it was even more modal, and you had a Sheets of Sound period, and it's hard to generalize about Coltrane. You have to study all the different periods, and studying the periods and studying Coltrane is about studying his particular records, and you got to know all of them. Frankly, my favorite record of all time, this used to be when people used to give people records as presents. Believe it or not, that was a thing. Like, people would actually buy an LP for someone. Hey, I got a present for you. Or even a CD. It used to be a great gift, but I used to buy people, my favorite record to give people for a present was John Coltrane and Johnny Hartman. Johnny Hartman was a jazz singer that very few people knew about. And it's one of the greatest records of all time. It's Coltrane's group playing with Johnny Hartman singing, and they do, oh my God, they do some of the most amazing standards, and it's one of the greatest recordings, jazz recordings, no, recordings period ever made, one of the greatest sounding recordings. And Johnny Hartman has the deepest, most luscious voice, powerful, blow your mind. If you want to listen to a great Coltrane record, that is a great Coltrane record that very few people know, and you should know, because it's one of the greatest sounding and most beautiful records of Coltrane's. So.
Do you know who Barry Harris is?
Yeah.
Do you have any opinion on his theories and specifically sixth diminished scale? People ask me occasionally about Barry's theories, which I haven't really studied that much. So I don't really have an opinion, but I could have an opinion in a few days. What was?
I have to admit to everybody here. So I was a music producer and played in bands for 25 years or so. And I didn't do any music at all, and didn't play any gigs or anything on guitar, any jazz, anything for 25 years. And only since I started my channel last year have I gotten back into this, believe it or not. So everything I learned and that I know, I mean, I've learned tons since then, but when people ask me books about like the Slonimsky Thesaurus of Scales and Melodic Patterns, yeah, I know that because that came out, years ago. And I know the Lydian chromatic concept because I studied with George Russell. I took a class with him for 2 years, and I know those books, but I don't know any, books from the 80s on or anything like that. So.
How was the? I think you talked about it already, but how was it meeting Synyster Gates?
Oh, great! He's the greatest guy. He's a great gypsy jazz player, which many of you wouldn't know, which I didn't know. He's a hardcore musician, really. All the guys in the band are. The drummer of the band, Brooks, his brother, Brooks Wackerman, his brother Chad, was Alan Holdsworth's drummer and Frank Zappa's drummer. For years. Chad Wackerman is one of the greatest drummers out there. So there's a real rich music tradition with the band, with Avenged Sevenfold, that goes beyond the music of the band. Is that these guys are serious musicians as well. Outside of that are interested in other music, and it's fascinating actually. To when he played, he was showing me some of the gypsy jazz stuff when he was here in the studio. I was going to do a sounding off with them, but we were hanging out and we just never got around to it. We're going to do it when they're off tour in a couple weeks. But he plays a lot of Django type stuff, which is really cool, and it's nothing you would expect, and or nothing that I expected, and it was killer listening to him play. And he had this massively big pick. I've never seen anyone play with a pick that thick, except for Pat Martino had a stone pick that he played with that was immensely thick and had a great sound. So, great guys, great guys.
Do you think it's important to play multiple instruments when you're a film composer?
Yes. Yeah, it's important because I mean, you don't have to. You don't have to, but I think it helps. If I wasn't a string player, I wouldn't understand all the bowing articulations, and I think that that's kind of important because, um, you know, having played with a bow, starting on cello and going to bass and playing for, you know, however many years I played, 25 years or whatever, and it informs you in a different way when you're writing for strings, for example, and you know, and being a producer and playing multiple instruments and putting tunes together also informs you for things like film scoring. A lot of things, you know, things that are done in the orchestra, like when, you know, when John Williams is doing piccolo, you know, flourishes that will lead you into sections, you know, that you'll hear him do, or swells with cymbals that end with a crash, are the same kind of things we'll do when we use a backwards piano into the chorus on a you know, if you're doing it whatever, an EDM track or a rock track or whatever, the same principles, they're just orchestrated within the orchestra. But playing multiple instruments is helpful in that it informs you what the limitations are. But I wouldn't get hung up on that. If you have a great ear, you can write great music, even without any. I mean, Danny Elfman didn't, you know, he's one of the most successful film composers, and he, you know, he's not a multi-instrumentalist or anything, as far as I know. Most film scores are pianists, so that's, you know, but they play, you know, a lot of times they'll play different instruments. Bach played, you know, was a string player and a keyboard player. Beethoven, Mozart, I mean, they all played multiple instruments.
Could you briefly talk about the difference between temporarily changing the tonal center or modulating?
That's a great question. Temporary change of tonal system would be like a secondary dominant, secondary diminished seventh chord, something that's related to one of the chords in the key, even a tritone substitute that is a flat 2 dominant chord that doesn't really modulate. If I'm going like this, that's not a modulation when I go to that flat 2 chord is not in the key. If I go, this is just a sub for 5, a tritone sub. So brief modulations like that are not really modulations because they're related to the to one of the chords in the key. That happens to be a flat 2. You could have things where you're going like this. So I went E minor 7 to B7 altered. So I did that's called back cycling. So I went to the 5 chord of the 2 chord. So that's a 5 of 2 back to 2, flat 2 to 1. So those are not modulations. A modulation would be an obvious key change, like the Beatles. If I fell in love with you, you promised to be true and help me understand. That's a modulation. There's no other way that you can go between. I guess it could be a flat 2. I guess that could actually be a tritone sub. I didn't think of it. But then he goes, because I've been in love before. Thought that love was more than just holding hands. That's gone from D flat major to D major. So that's definitely a modulation there. Anything that's an obvious sustained change of key is a modulation, essentially. Anything brief is just a sub, you know, some type of device, secondary dominant, tritone substitute, something like that's nameable, and that only lasts for a brief period. Aaron?
Are you related to Anthony Bourdain?
I wish I was as cool as Anthony Bourdain. Man. No, he's like probably 6 inches taller than me and weighs about 50 pounds less than I do. I do have more white hair than anyone in my family. I've got 6 siblings. And I'm the second youngest, but I don't know why I'm the one with the white hair and everybody else has dark hair. I don't know. Probably because I have 3 little kids.
How often did your son listen to complex music in order to develop perfect pitch?
Till he was 2. Just from in utero till he was 2, and that was it. And then we just listen to music like anyone else. Oh, then I started listening to it, I mean, honestly, we listen to it all the time. At dinner, I play soundtracks. I play music every night when I go out for dinner. But with Dylan, when he was a baby, because, when he was the firstborn, you have a lot more time. And I'd listen to music for 3 hours with him in a day, no problem. And interact with him. I'd dance around. Oh, man, I would just go crazy. And he loved it. I had a synthesizer on the floor that he could crawl over to any time and make noise on. I put on a string sound or a piano sound, and he would play on it every day. And Dylan does no practice of anything. Aaron, you want to attest to this? Aaron's been here for 5 weeks or so. How many times has Dylan been down here doing stuff?
Maybe once.
Right. And Aaron couldn't believe it. Dylan never practices anything with his ear. He quit piano lessons, and he plays soccer, he swims, he plays video games, plays with his friends, and doesn't do anything in music. But he has to take music at his new school he's going to next year, so he's got to actually learn an instrument, so this will be interesting. He's got to learn an instrument other than the piano. I mean, Dylan's a fine piano player when he when he was practicing. He played Bach pieces, Beethoven pieces, things like that. But he's like a typical 9-year-old. He's not interested in it.
Somebody's asking you about how to navigate all the theory. Do you think it's sensible to set up a theory learning plan?
Yes. Yeah. Theory, I mean, kind of the way that I organize it in my book, where you start with intervals and then you build chords and understand chords and their relationships to parent scales. Like the one chord, and understand in the one chord the triad is a major chord, the 2 is minor, 3 is minor. Well, 1, 4, and 5 is major, 2, 3, and 6 is minor, 7 is diminished. You also have to understand at the same time, Ionian goes with the 1 chord, Dorian with the 2, Phrygian 3, Lydian 4, and etc. Then you have to understand the same thing of melodic minor scales and harmonic minor scales. It's all memorization, though. That's the thing. It's like people don't realize that in order to really understand theory, you have to memorize this stuff. There's no shortcuts. I mean, your ability to memorize is your ability to play is totally dependent on your ability to memorize. So, theory is laid out in very particular ways. When you study theory in college, you start with SATB writing, soprano, alto, tenor, bass, and you learn how to write 4-part chorales, and you learn about voice leading. No parallel fifths, no parallel octaves. You learn about how to voice chords. You don't have major chords with doubled thirds or minor chords with double thirds. It tells you what notes are double. And these things really are true for a reason. For example, when I play this chord G, cowboy chord G, country players will play that sometimes. That's actually a generalization. They don't. Most people play this G. You know why they play that G? Because if I play this, I have a doubled third. You have 2 B's and it weakens the sound of the chord. When I play this, I took one of those out and the chord has much more power because it only has 1/3 in it. So even when you're creating chord voicings, you want to use these same principles. You don't want to have doubled thirds and things because it unfocuses the chord. In the first chord in Star Wars, there are 22 B flats. This is B flat major chord. 22 B flats, 3 Ds, and 2 Fs. Okay? Because John Williams wanted you to hear the note B flat as the melody, but it's still a B flat major chord. So those other things are voiced. The Fs actually sound, because of the instruments they're in, sound more powerful or equal to Ds, but they're both diminished in value in relationship to the B flat because he wants that note to sound.
How much money can a working musician signed with an agent look to be making at a gig, say for a 300 cap venue?
That really depends on who you are. You can't generalize with that because there's people that have huge followings that charge really high ticket prices and play. A 300 cap venue is a decent sized place if you can sell it out, but a typical agent's going to take 10% if somebody's booking it for you. So Yeah, hard to say. Hard to say. You know, if you have a big following and you can get $20 a head, $25 a head, you can make some decent money. You know, some people play 300-seat venues and charge $150. You know, Metallica. I don't remember what the tickets were. I was comped when I went the other night with Avenged Sevenfold, but they were not cheap, and it was a stadium. U2 is selling their tickets for $250, and they played, I want to say, 80,000 people. One of my friends went to see him play in Boston, and in a stadium with I want to say they said 80,000 people, and I think the cheapest ticket was $250. That's the kind of gig I want to have. So we good?
Yeah, you want one more?
One more? Okay, one more.
Could you give an example of how to write a nice melody using the Lydian scale?
How to write a nice melody using a Lydian scale.
Or just a motif or something like that.
Motif. How's that? So, that's even nicer. I like that. I want to go. Yeah, that's good. So why I think this is a good motif, because I start on C and I'm going, I'm playing a C sus2 sound. What did I do? Yeah. I think that's beautiful. Really, because of the combination of intervals. Because I have that sound, and I have that sound all together. And it ends with an upbeat phrase and everything, but I think it's a cool. That sounds pretty cool together. I think that's like a beautiful Lydian sound. So knowing the right intervals, how to combine intervals the right way is what gives it the sound. Playing the scale, you know, is not. You got to know how to. A good motif has some type of rhythmic thing behind it, and you want to have something that has inherent voice leading in the thing. I did. That's really those are kind of the target notes that I was using. Whatever. But I'm thinking of this chord, I'm thinking of this chord, I'm thinking of that chord when I was coming up with my motif. So, because I think those three interval combinations sound beautiful together. That's all for now, as I like to say. Please subscribe here. This video will be unavailable. I'm letting people know. My Q&As are unavailable later on. So it'll be available for a couple hours, but then it will be hidden after that. So as to not clog things up. So I want to encourage people to actually join them when they're in progress. So, but I'll be coming out with a new video maybe later this evening. Anyways, check out my videos from the last couple days. Share them with people. Like them. Comment on them. That really makes a huge difference. You know, try and, you know, turn your friends on about it. Tell them about my channel. Don't keep it a secret.
Tell Rick that he should do this often. It's a massive help.
Cool. I'm going to. I appreciate that. Thanks, everybody.